Good afternoon, one and all. My name is Ravi Mora. I work as a business analyst for FPSC Strategic Planning and Intelligence team. I'm joined here my colleague Louise Brown, who is the BI specialist in the team. And today we're just going to talk about our journey with Click in our setup, where we have gone through a Click solution from start to end, and just try and highlight the benefits and advantages of that we have come across in the life cycle. So the first slide is just giving us a brief introduction about FPSC for those who haven't worked quite closely with FPSC. It's just giving us a brief idea about who we are, what we do, our challenge, which is our problem statement, and our journey through Click in the past 6 months, which has helped us arrive at a solution which is already delivering efficiencies for us. So who we are, healthAlliance FPSC is the Northern Region shared service provider specializing in finance and procurement. Basically, we are the aggregator service provider who specialize in procurement and supply chain services, and we deliver those solutions to the Northern Region DHBs. What we do is we provide end-to-end tailored FPSC, which is finance, procurement, and supply chain solutions, using our skills, expertise, and experience and relationship management to the Northern Region DHBs. Our challenge in past, before the implementation of Click, has been one which has been prolonged for a period of time, whereas we have a data set or a database which has not been that easily interpretable, and we've had a fair amount of challenge on synthesizing that information to be able to get valuable outcomes out of it. So what we're going to try and look for in this presentation is we will be looking at Click and how it has addressed those problems in the SPICE setup. Our journey is just giving us a bit of an indication about how we started off and where we started off and where we have ended. This is just something to give you an idea of what we can expect in today's presentation. So we're going to be presenting you with the incumbent data structure that we were using before Click was implemented, and just the challenges around that. We'll be talking about how the Click lifecycle has made that lifecycle shorter and easier and efficient to use, and largely looking at the benefits that have come out of that. That will be followed up by SRM app demo, which is the app that we have built for procurement, and followed up by a Q&A session. So before we jump into this, I just want to take some time to explain what SRM is for people who don't work quite closely with procurement. SRM means Supplier Relationship Management, and basically it's a pretty standard procurement exercise where procurement team engages with multiple suppliers, and they measure varying parameters so that they can measure a supply performance, and based on that they can provide feedback to internal teams to make strategic decisions as to how they want to approach managing that relationship with a particular supplier. This has been a constant requirement for any procurement setup, and at FPSC, this was highlighted as one of the things that we had to pick up on as well. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a structure around how we are placed in this setup for the Northern DHBs. So as you can see, the Northern DHBs consist of Auckland, ADHB, Counties Manukau, Northland District Health Board, and Waitemata, which make up the Northern DHBs. healthAlliance, FPSC, acts as an aggregator for all of these DHBs in the Northern region, providing services to all of these DHBs for their supply chain and procurement needs. When SRM program was implemented, the FPSC team the procurement team in FPSC had identified that there was a need to establish a supplier relationship program, and they went about creating one in-house. The SRM program is basically the one that estimates what will be the scope for the strategic planning and intelligence team to work with. Basically, Louise and I, we work with the scope given to us by the SRM program so that we can build something which provides value and the insights that the SRM team are after, which will eventually feed back to the procurement side of things and feed their requirements. To give you an example, like in SRM, if there is a supplier, we will be looking at various parameters, and we'll try and get the best information that we can and pass it back to the SRM program, and then they will be meeting the suppliers so that they can discuss about those parameters and look at further terms of negotiations. So as you can see, the SRM program over here would have ideally given us the specifications. The specifications that we were looking for generally were made up of up-to-date data per supplier where possible, per DHB, so that they can exactly look at which DHBs are involved, year-on-year spend, which always helps to draw out a comparison between previous year and the current year. Probably it's really good to have a dashboard in there, where all the information is available and you can look at it all in one go. And standardized format. This is one of the key requirements where when you're looking at from supplier to supplier, the parameters and the data presented on the dashboards is exactly the same as the one before. So these are the basis of creating the requirements that SRM program conveyed to SPI so that we, strategic planning and intelligence team, so that we could work on that. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a rundown of what the process of actually creating one of these reports looked like before click implementation in the strategic planning and intelligence team. So in this slide, we're just highlighting this flow of information or the start and end of process. So ideally, the request would come in from a stakeholder that they would want to perform SRM on a given supplier. For doing this, we would have to consider quite a few different data sources. So Oracle database or the Oracle data source is the main depository where all the spend data is recorded for every transactions that go through for the DHBs. But that is not enough sometimes because that may cover some information, but some information may be covered, but it is not exactly in the right cleansed, clear format that we can actually make sense of. In that case, we have to actually go back to the supplier so that we can ask them for some further information so that we can cleanse our in-house data a bit more and add a bit more clarity to it. And a lot of times, things that are purchased through a particular supplier may not have that supplier name listed on it because those things might be coming from a third-party logistics provider like OneLink. In a case like that, that item will simply have one link as the supplier. So we had to consider all of these three sources so that we could start by covering all the bases and then synthesize our way into cleansing that data. But when I say that, that cleansing process is made up of a lot of different steps that were involved. So this is looking at an SQL script execution, which is basically generating an extract from Oracle. Now, by doing so, you're actually querying a huge data set into the Oracle server, and that query would run for a while, and it would give out a report. This was able to cater the needs, but still there was further need for cleansing this data set, and also bearing in mind, because of the volume of the transactions, the data that would be put out would have to be split along 2 or 3 different spreadsheets. So when you're trying to stitch all of that information together, it would take quite a bit of time. The second thing to be done was to identify, assess, consider any historic extracts, because we had been running these scripts for quite a while. We would always have to go back and check if a script had been previously run or not, so that we could actually make sure that all the period is covered. If there is something that is already extracted, if we can use it or not. We have to give a fair amount of consideration to things like that so that we are looking at exactly the right amount of information required for the task. And after doing so, we had to also request information from the third-party logistics provider, specifically around part numbers, so that they could be matched for supplier. And that way we were able to make sure that all the items that were being purchased through third-party logistics provider were being covered under a specific supplier name, if that was the case. And as you can see, there are quite a few steps in here. So this process took quite a while. So on an average, preparing an extract would take us anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks, so that we have all of these things lined up and all of these things are properly put together and they are giving us the right result. And you will be interested to see what comes out of all of this, which is the next step over here. So all of this effort and all of this time that is being put in was only able to generate this one little spreadsheet that has come up on the screen over here, which is basically trying to show that there was only one report coming out of it. And that kind of goes to show the complexity of the process over here. We're looking at 3 different data sets. We are synthesizing it for like a really elongated period of time, only to have one report. And bearing in mind, this report can only be used for one-time use only. So as soon as there is another supplier that needs SRM done, us analysts in the team would have to run the whole cycle all over again, which is again a time-consuming process as highlighted. Now, you can imagine that like in an SRM program for a company like FPSC, we are just not going to be looking at 1 or 2 suppliers. We're going to be looking at quite a few suppliers. And imagine if all of those suppliers send, or there's a need to do SRM for all of those suppliers just at the same time, what will happen? I'm going to flip on to the next slide to give you a bit of an idea of what that'll look like. There you go. Looks a bit crazy, isn't it? Like, I mean, there are 9 suppliers in there and just bouncing all over the place. And it's exactly the same process if you would like to zoom in and see. That same process, complicated process, long process being repeated 9 times. And this just kind of goes to show how complex it would be to address a simple work requirement where your SRM team would like to get some supplier information on certain parameters, but you have to sit through this long process to be able to address that. Now, this complexity has been able to be addressed by Qlik, and the efficiencies of the Qlik process are being highlighted in the next slides over here. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a rundown of what that looks like. So as usual, the request comes in from the stakeholder for performing an SRM request on a supplier. We are still looking at the same data sources. We are looking at Oracle. We are looking at all the supplier data where possible, and we are looking at third-party logistics provider information where we are required to. But the interesting thing over here is in the next step, all of this information that is coming in, it is being prepared with a uniformly created extract, transform, and load logic. This is something that we use for Qlik. Before the information is loaded into Qlik, there is a uniform logic applied to all of that information that is stored with us. And this logic helps us determine how clear or how precise our data is when it goes into Qlik. More than anything, it provides that robust infrastructure that you would be looking for when you're looking at multiple suppliers over a period of time and having that same lens across the whole field, basically. What that would enable us to do is that uniform logic would be loaded into Qlik, and it will be readily available when it is required to be used. And as a result, you will be able to see that you can look at the SRM dashboard, which is that bigger box over here. You can not only just look at supplier 1, but you're able to look at supplier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, I couldn't fit as many suppliers in that box, but I would have. But the point is to show that you can have a look at many suppliers in one go, because all of that information is coming from a uniformly created logic table that is being fed into Qlik and is able to be accessed at any time. But not just that, because of all of that information and all of that logic has been uniformly fed into the Qlik database, you're able to build other apps out of it as well, which include purchase history, 3PL transaction analysis, supplier spend analysis, and these are just a few things to give you a bit of a flavor of how we are able to address that problem of looking at multiple data sources and just coming up with one report, how Qlik has enabled us to actually go back and not just deliver on supplier 1, but a few other suppliers as well as some other things that are not directly related to SRM in any case, but because the information is sitting in that database, we are able to make use of that. So this is just to show a bit of a bigger picture view of how Qlik works and how it has given us the freedom to look at information in a really flexible way. At the end of it, I mean, the Qlik process helps us understand the ETL process is standard, and it helps us apply those similar standard rules all across the plane, which is quality assured and tested, reusable QEDs. So these are a set of rules and logics that can be built for building one application, but because they are flexibly used with other applications, you can use the same logic to build other apps. And more than anything, it helps us come up with one data library which is able to support multiple apps and which support multiple users. As a result, we have a very robust value pyramid already giving us results. We're able to get up-to-date data because the way Qlik works is that all of that information that is being fed from Oracle is refreshed overnight, and the data that is being fed into Qlik is on a current basis. So when you run Qlik next morning, the transactions from the night before that have been entered have already been included into Qlik queries. One of the most important things for FPSC has been reducing strain on the aging Oracle system. So every time when we used to run an Oracle query just for a single report, it would take us approximately 20 minutes to an hour's time to be able to get all the extracts in place, sometimes even longer. And once all of that comes through, we have to put it all together. But what that does is that it's only answering one query, whereas Qlik is able to answer multiple queries without having to put any strain on the server on a repetitive basis, because all of those queries have already been fed into the Qlik database. That's why we are just able to go in and we're just able to manipulate the fields that we want, and we're able to get the information that we want without actually running a query into the Oracle's system. There's a built-in reference database which is helping us now and which will only get more thorough as more things are fed into it. This is basically to emphasize on fact like, for example, in SRM, where we have one link data, we never had anything like that before. Every time we had to look at before we actually build our apps. And once our apps are up and running, we are able to use this logic on a very steady basis, and we are able to answer the questions on the fly without having to run a lot of separate queries. What that does for us is that provides internal efficiencies for the analyst team, self-reliance, and builds stakeholder trust. The analyst team has already experienced reduction in the number of hours that we would put in to get the sort of information that used to take us a really long time before. We are able to just pick a few filters and pick the selections that we want, and the information is readily available on the databases as we would like to see it. More than that, these databases can just be printed off and just be shared with people so that they can see the value in it as well. It has enabled us with a lot of self-reliance. So something like this never existed before as well. For example, if someone in SRM team would like to get that information, they had no other option but to rely on us to be able to process that information and synthesize the outputs and then present it to them. But with Qlik, we are able to empower them so that they can go into Qlik themselves and pick the filters and the things that they would like to select as parameters and get the outputs from that. And with all of those things in play, it has built a lot of stakeholder trust, because the views that they're looking at, the logics that are being considered, and all the information that has been processed into Qlik is all solid state, user tested, quality tested, and the logics are robust. And because of that, we know that there is a lot of solidity in any outputs that we are providing, which has provided a lot of stakeholder trust amongst our stakeholders. And with all of those things into picture, it gives us ease of speed of analysis and efficient user experience, which has been an outcome that we had been trying to achieve. And by saying so, Qlik has efficiently enabled us to be able to achieve an outcome like that. In past, this would have been quite difficult going through the Oracle process. So just a bit of a rundown on how Qlik has helped us in our setup. I'll follow this up with an SRM demo where Louise Brown would be presenting the SRM app itself and giving you a live demo of the app. So I'm going to hand it over to Louise now.
So as Ravi touched on, the purpose of our SRM spend application is to enable members of our procurement team involved in the Supplier Relationship Management program to easily view and analyze up-to-date invoice spend by supplier across the whole Northern region. This app includes Oracle EBS invoice spend data, and it incorporates data from our third-party logistics partner, OneLink. I'll just show you the data model really quickly. See how that loads. And you can see it's a very simple, it's a simplified data model. And the reason for this is that we wanted to ensure a consistent approach to spend analysis between all of our users and also ensure optimal performance for our end user. So it leverages existing extract and transform processes that were built for us by Acumen BI for a detailed procurement spend application, which has slightly different views to this SRM spend application. To do that, we extract raw data from approximately 20 different Oracle EBS tables each night. There's around about 293 million records that are coming into this application. We then transform that into an optimized single facts table, which you should be able to see here in the center. This is a table labeled the final table. That uses consistent, agreed and validated business logic to ensure that we are all using the same data joins and the same report logic for all of our spend analysis, and it gives us one source of the truth. You can see OneLink data is sitting off here to the side. So we've got spend by financial year up in the top there, and then total spend for our selected periods. You can see our application is limited to July 2016 to date. Under the next date, you've got a split by organisation. This is a key benefit of using this Click application for our team. Previously, when you wanted to analyse spend for the whole northern region, you would need to run 4 separate queries for each DHB, but with Click, we are showing the whole northern region plus healthAlliance spend itself in the one application. This view is limited to rolling 12 months based on a user specification. So then we've got a little bit of a trend by financial year sitting up in that midsection. You can see the spend by supply type, which is using agreed business logic that was validated with the team to split out our spend by services, goods, capex versus prepayments, etc. And down the left on each of our sheets, we've got a common set of filters. So you can filter by financial year, you can select a special date range, you can filter by organisation, organisation, and you can filter by that Fred level 4 account, which is a financial reporting expenditure data level 4 account, the posting level account used in our common chart of accounts for the Northern Region DHBs. The reason that we use that to classify spend is that it is one of the most complete forms of classification available. Approximately 99.9% of our spend is aligned to a Fred account, which is more complete than something like FPSC or procurement categories or item catalogue categories at the moment. But we are working to make those other types of categorization more meaningful in the future. There's a custom item search field, which I'll come back to in a little bit. And there's an originating supplier and supplier fields there. The originating supplier field uses a mapping load from our OneLink data and enables us to show the originating supplier for items that are sold via that third-party logistics partner, wherever it's possible for us to match the spend to a part number. So sometimes with IPROC spending or manually created reports, those part numbers are not reliably generated in the data, but wherever we can, we are matching to an originating supplier. So to do a search on data that includes for a supplier that included OneLink spend as well as direct supplier spend previously would have required manual effort by an analyst to perform VLOOKUPs and join together multiple sets of data. But with Click, we're able to do it with 1 or 2 clicks just by doing a search. So let's do a demo of that. Let's have a look for the supplier 3M. And you can see that we can find 4 instances in our data set of 3M. There's Australia, New Zealand, and a couple of medical accounts. So if I apply that filter, you can see down in this top suppliers by spend, if we had just searched for 3M on the supplier field, we would have only gotten a fraction of the total spend that we actually do with 3M because the majority of it goes via OneLink. You can also see splits by organisation and everything. So let's have a look at our, this will be our overview for a user as they start to understand a supplier as they're preparing for an SRM meeting. If we move through to the next piece, we can now see who in the DHB, which areas of the hospital are using the supplier's goods and services. The analysis might become a bit more meaningful if I was to quickly filter on one financial year so that we can see the most recent financial year, for example. And from this view, we can drill down to seeing where in the hospital, which specific locations are purchasing from the supplier, and who are our key stakeholders. So if we needed to understand any kind of relationship issues before the meeting, if we had heard rumours about some issues, who would we want to speak to? Who would our best stakeholders be? If we move on through the application, this is that Fred Level 4 account, the way of categorising spend that I mentioned just before. It tells us, this view is intended to tell us what types of products are we purchasing from the suppliers. So you can see for 3M, dressings and bandages are a big part of that spend. And then this is an item level view. So if you needed to understand the most important items from that supplier, you could have a look at what's our biggest spend with the supplier. At this point, I'll just clear our filter on 3M and do a little demonstration of the value that we've added from our item search field. So our item search field is a custom field that we generated just inside this application, and it's made up of 5 different fields inside our data model. So it concatenates all together the item description field, the Fred Level 4 account description, the catalogue category description, the FPSC description, and the supplier part number. And it enables us to search for keywords or supplier part numbers and view a more complete total of the spend, from which we can then perform detailed analysis to remove any false positives and get to the exact result we're looking for. So if I sit here, I've just filtered my data on FY 18-19, no other filters applied. If I now search, this is how traditionally we would have done the search, have a look for the keyword dressing in my item description itself. If I have a look at that much spend, that is 38K that comes back in my very reduced, very scrambled demo data. There will be a much larger number in real life, obviously. So that's one way that I could try and search for dressings. As we were scanning through 3M, we saw that there was a Fred Level 4 account called dressings. So let's see if I used that account to try and see how much do I spend on dressings. That comes back at 68K. And I search for the word dressing there. That brings back a full 80K in spend. So it's a much more complete view. What we found was a key benefit of Click for this field was that it was incredibly easy for me to implement it. It was just a simple concatenation of the fields. I was not previously able to do something like that. The analytical team working in Power BI or Excel, we really struggled with the volume of data that we were trying to analyze. So we had massive performance issues. So making a concatenated search field was never really an option for us before. It's been made possible by the speed and efficiency of our Click engine and to this application. If they need to understand gloves, for example, who's my key supplier for gloves, they can use this item search field and move on to the top supplier view and see who are the key suppliers for that category of spend. So prior to the use of Click, a typical ticket response time with an analyst, no matter what it was roughly 48 hours, so two working days. But now they can get an overview of that potential spend almost instantly with 2 or 3 clicks and a little tiny bit of typing. So it's been a really big win for our team. I'll just continue through the journey of the application quickly while still looking at dressing. So if I take off this filter on financial year, we can see by financial year, by month, the trends.
So just wanted to thank Louise and Ravi again for taking the time to present and for us today. So a couple of things that came through from a Q&A perspective. Ravi, slide 6 during your presentation, there was a question around the ETL component, the uniformed ETL. Is that being done in Click? Is it being done in a data warehouse?
That is being done 100% via Click.
Yeah, because I actually wasn't sure on that one, so I thought I'd better double check before I assume anything. Yeah, so the uniform ETL logic is Click, that's going directly into those data sources.
Yeah, so that's one of the ways that we reduce strain on our infrastructure, was that we do raw extracts once from Oracle each day, and then we transform those for each application or each set of applications in one batch, and then we have multiple applications sourcing those same transformed QVDs. So it's been a source of efficiency for us.
And I think previously you were also using the teaser to do some of that logic before Click?
Yes, that has been retired.
Cool. So it's good. So the next question was around your item search field. And so what they're interested in, was there any special algorithm, or so it might just be worth explaining how you've created that item search field.
There's no special algorithm. I literally just concatenated those 5 fields together. I was really excited that it didn't crash anything, because I thought I was creating a field that had a lot of unique characters. I was a little bit worried about performance, to be honest. But it's been amazing. It was so easy for me to implement. I've got less than 6 months experience using Click, and it was pretty cool that I could just go into the code, concatenate a field, add it up the top, and boom, I can search anything. It's been one of the best features of Click for me so far, to be honest.
Fantastic. And then the next question, I was just asking a little bit about the ad hoc sheet and whether you could explain that a little bit further. You don't necessarily need to if you think it's easier to demonstrate, then you can demonstrate.
So I will admit that Acumen BI are the experts in the uses of this this little tool. So I can come back in here and show this. So to do this in our data model, you can see there are 2 little mini tables that Karen from Acumen BI helped us set up. There is the filter dimension and filter dimension 2.
There's a little bit of delay on the screen.
Oh, sorry.
I think that's up there now.
Show? Did I edit the page and show it? So there's dimensions and columns pulled in, but the data here, look at how badly I know how to work this.
That's okay. Yeah, and that's something that we can pick up with others directly, and maybe we can get Karen involved so we can explain it properly. So I think there was another question that came through. I'm just going to bring that up. So there's a question around version control of the source code, and I'm happy to cover that one off if you prefer. So Click's probably a little bit different to maybe your traditional reports where you have a whole lot of code for every single report that you're doing, and then it's important to have granular version control or source control around each one of those reports. So within Click, effectively the source code is sitting within that data model and the ETL logic, or a significant amount of it. And if you want to apply source control to that, then you can do that within include files. And you can import those files within a text editor that you use. You can load them in GitHub if you wanted. And then within Click, you're actually just importing a file that holds all your ETL logic and your source code. And then the other component of that is the actual front end at the visualization level, where you're sort of adding your calculated dimensions and measures and things like that. And generally at that level, we're applying version control at a whole application level rather than at a chart or an object level. So it's a matter of version controlling the whole application. So often it's a lot simpler from a version control, source control perspective within Click than what it is with a traditional reporting system, just because there's a lot less moving parts. So that's some of the main questions that came through. I did have a question around, I guess, what's next or where are you heading in the future? I'm not sure if you sort of covered that off, but is there any future development plan or areas planned? It's okay to say not at the moment?
No, so we definitely do have a plan of ongoing application development. It's agreed with our executive team, and the next one that we will be working on is a clinical product coordination application. And then there's some things in the pipeline for our purchasing team and our master data team as well. But those obviously, that plan may change as needs and wants demand. Yeah.
Yeah, cool, fantastic. Excellent. So we'll probably close it out there. I just want to reiterate that the data that was being demonstrated is scrambled information. It is not the real information. So just please bear that in mind and don't take anything out of the information or the analysis. And thank you again to Louise and Ravi for taking the time to present. It was very good, very interesting, and lots of interesting things to learn. And thank you everyone for attending. We appreciate your time as well, and we'll see you at the next webinar.